All right, let's look at two works of art from the Mughal period in India. First, let's talk a little bit about the Mughals, though. So the Mughal Empire in India, they claim to descend from the Timurids and the Mongols. So think that this is a Muslim empire. And when they came to power, they had a very, very cosmopolitan court life. And by that I mean their court life was filled with many foreign visitors. People from all over Europe, from the Middle East, would have been part of the court. So you see a lot of foreign influence on their art, and we will discuss this further as we look at this painting, Jahangir preferring a Sufi sheikh to kings. Now, one foreign influence that we can really see here is the influence of Persian paintings. And you can probably see that right here in this watercolor, because it looks like some stuff we've already seen before. Bahram Gur fighting the Karg. It looks like a little bit, or you can see the influence of something like the Court of the Gayumars, right? And what we see here is because those two paintings were part of Shahnamaz. And remember, Shahnamaz were the Persian books of kings. And this as well is a painting of the Mughal leader Jahangir in a very venerated position. Right? So he's clearly meant to be what we're focusing on, and he's clearly meant to be shown as a very great leader. So let's take a little bit, and also, like the Shahnamaz, this would have been part of a larger book with multiple paintings and calligraphy and writing in it. Of course, also like the Shahnamaz, this book was ripped apart by European collectors who wanted to take the individual paintings. So it no longer exists in its original book form. So let's take a look at what is actually happening in this painting and what it means. Now, this painting is meant to be allegorical. And by allegorical, we mean that it's a story full of symbols that we need to interpret. So let's look at a couple of the symbols right now. First of all, we have this very clear hierarchical scale, right? Jahangir is up here at the top, and then it kind of, all the different figures sort of go in order down here from most important to least important. So let's first take a look at Jahangir. He has a halo around him, which again is very, very indicative of foreign influence, right? Muslim art, you wouldn't really see halos around people, right? Because, right, there is no God but Allah. Like, to suggest that a human is godly would not be common. But nevertheless, we have a halo. He has the sun and the moon in this halo. It's meant to show his dominion over all the earth and even the heavens, right? He sits on a throne that is an hourglass. Now, you could read this in one of two ways. One way that he has sort of triumphed over, time and the idea of passing time or mortality. And in fact, these inscriptions here suggest that, say, something along the lines of, may Jahangir rule forever, for he is such a benevolent and wonderful ruler. Or you could read it as, a kind of a mourning, and indeed this little putti down here seems to be upset, that, the sands of time will pass and one day Jahangir will not be the ruler anymore. In addition to these symbols, let's also take a look. Oh, by the way, I just mentioned that we also have this other foreign influence, right? We've got little putti over here. So again, examples of European influence in this painting. Now, let's take a look at who is over here along the side. Okay, so first we have the painter himself, Bichtir, who was a Hindu painter. So in the Mughal court, the artists weren't all Muslims either. They incorporated, and in fact, Jahangir's father, Akbar, was very well known for being very tolerant and bringing many different religions and faiths into the Mughal court. So we have Bichtir here, and he is, oops, let's go back here. He's holding a small image, and this is a painting that he himself painted, and it's an image of himself with an elephant that is supposed to show that it was meant to be a gift that Jahangir gave him. So he's, kind of commemorating his great depth of gratitude to Jahangir for treating him so well. So he's on the lowest rung here. Now, next up, we have James I. So we have an English king. And this would have been an image that Bichtir copied from a portrait that was given to Jahangir from the English. So he's actually copying a portrait that was given to Jahangir. Next, we have an Ottoman Sultan. Now, this is, again, this isn't meant to be any particular Ottoman Sultan, but what we can see is that the Sultan is here, this English king is here, and they're all below Jahangir. They almost seem to be the Sultan has got his hands clasped in front of him, almost like he's offering supplication to Jahangir. James looks a little, worried down here. And who does Jahangir prefer, as the title says, to all of these folks? He prefers this Sufi Shaik. Now, when a Sufi would be a practitioner of a mystic form of Islam, and the story behind this is that Jahangir's father, Akbar, didn't have a male heir. And so he consulted a Sufi Shaik and was told what he had to do. And then, he followed the prayers that the Sufi Shaik told him that he had to say and everything. And indeed, he was blessed with a son. He was blessed with Jahangir. So in this, we see that Jahangir is, both in terms of what he's doing and in terms of the spatial arrangement of the painting, that he prefers to be with this Sufi Shaik as opposed to all of these great kings of men and leaders of men. He prefers the simple, ascetic, religious man, and he's indeed giving him a book. So that pretty much is what we have to say about that. All right, so now we're going to look at, from Mughal painting, we're going to move on to some Mughal architecture. You are surely very, very familiar with the Taj Mahal, probably one of the most, if not the most famous building in all the world. So here it is, located in Agra, in the city of Agra, in the state of Uttar Pradesh, in the country of India. So the architect here is Ustad Ahmed Lahori, who was the architect of the Emperor Shah Jahan. Now, as we have you probably know from the stories, the Taj Mahal is always thought of as like this monument to love, that Shah Jahan built it for his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, that he was devastated by her death and built this as her tomb to forever commemorate his great love for her. Now, that may be true, although some have speculated that perhaps the Taj Mahal was not, yes, Mumtaz Mahal's is interred here, her body is here and everything, but that it could have been that Shah Jahan was planning on building something like the Taj Mahal anyway, and some even speculate that it's more of an attempt to show the greatness of paradise, of the Muslim conception of paradise. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. First of all, just like with the Mughal painting we just looked at, we can see the influence of several different architectural styles here. So we've got this mosque form and also sort of like a tomb form, both of which would have been present in India before the Mughals arrived. The Mughals were not the first Muslim rulers in India. There was also the Delhi Sultanate, that also would have been using these kinds of Muslim architectural forms in their buildings. But we see the Muslim form, right? There's 4 minarets here, the dome that we see here, and specifically we see the influence of Persian architecture. Think about the Great Mosque at Isfahan and the Iwans in that Great Mosque, and you see that again here, right? We also see some traditional Indian Hindu architecture influencing this work. So these forms here are called chhatris, and chhatris are sort of just these domed kind of porches, I guess you could say, that they also have incorporated into the Taj Mahal. So a really syncretic piece that really brings together a lot of different forms. Now, the other thing about the Taj Mahal, let's go back to this idea of it being something like heaven on earth. Well, what does that mean? First of all, we've got this sense of it almost appears to be floating, and that's very much an important part of what Lahori was trying to do with this. It's raised up on this platform. So it's raised up above, not just sitting directly on the foundation here. It's this, very, very ethereal white marble color that we've got the reflecting pool here that also kind of serves to give it an airiness. The Iwans, as in the same way at the Great Mosque in Isfahan, they make it sort of seem a lot lighter as opposed to, big, heavy, even though this is an enormous, enormous structure. It is, 1,000 by 1,900 feet, but it doesn't look, big and heavy and ponderous. So all of these things, and in addition to that, the gardens around the Taj Mahal would have been planted with the kind of flowers and trees that in Muslim writings are said to, in Islamic writings are said to be what heaven is like or what paradise is like. So all of these things sort of give it this kind of feel of paradise. Let's look a little bit more closely at some other aspects of the Taj Mahal. If you look at the floor plan of the Taj Mahal, it's all about these octagons. Right, so we've got the central tomb is in the octagon here, and then 4 octagons off the side. Right? We've got these kind of mitered off corners here. And this again is meant to have symbolism. There are 8 levels to Islamic paradise. So we have these 8-sided shapes here. Also the writing here, all inlaid, right? So this is inlaid stone that's giving us this. These are all scriptures from the Quran that are about paradise. So everything about this is about paradise. Some other things to look at, features to look at, is this kind of beautiful inlaid stonework. So this is with precious and semi-precious stones inlaid in these, and again, what we recognize from Islamic art, right? These floral patterns in the marble. But even though we have all of this colorful detailing, again, the overwhelming feeling is still a lightness and an airiness, right? That these very delicate filigreed floral motifs throughout that don't take away or from the overall impression of this as being like a very light colored white building. We also see, just like we saw at Isfahan, this is from inside in the central tomb here. Cut work in the marble to, again, lighten things up, allow light in, to put patterns on top of patterns, giving it that sort of sense of infinity that we see so often in Muslim architecture. Now, the Taj Mahal here, now as we see it, and this is the gate that you would walk through to go see it, looks like it's just at the end of one garden. But, in fact, when it was originally built, it would have been in the center of 4 gardens. This is called a char bagh plan. Char bagh, char means 4. So it would be in the center of 4 different gardens.